welcome back. This is the second hour of Truth Jihad Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Barrett. I'm on every week, same time, same channel, here on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. For information about my radio shows and many other things, just visit the website, truthjihad.com. From there, you can click on the radio show link and find your way to information about today's show and other shows. All right, well, this hour, I'm going to be speaking with a couple of great guests, including one who's been on before, but it's been a while. It's Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn, who are working together right now with a wonderful new magazine called The Dot Connector magazine. Laura Knight-Jadczyk is well known in the alternative information world. Personally, I think maybe her greatest accomplishment that I know about, at least, is helping bring to the world this incredible book, Political Ponerology, written by a fellow named Lobachewski, probably butchering that name. And this is really the seminal book on political psychopathy, the fact that something 2 to 5% of males in the USA, different percentages in different countries, are basically born without any conscience whatsoever. These people have a tendency to rise to the top of power hierarchies with horrific results, and sometimes it turns into an epidemic, gets completely out of control, and we may be living through one of those times. They've done great work on other issues as well. The Dot Connector magazine, just Google it up, is, I think, one of the most interesting things on newsprint these days. So, hey, without further ado, let's welcome Joe Quinn and Laura Knight-Jadczyk. Welcome, Joe and Laura.
Hi, Kevin. It's good to be here.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, great to hear you guys. So, it's Laura. I think you were on the show about 2 years ago, as I recall. And we mainly discussed.
I have a vague memory of it. I've done a number of shows, and I forget.
I'm sure you have. You were really, really good, though, on that particular show. It was one of the most popular episodes.
We talked about ponerology, didn't we?
We sure did.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the book that inspired my essay, Twilight of the Psychopaths, which went viral, helped popularize it. Yeah. So, your magazine, Dot Connector, takes on all kinds of alternative information topics, as does the website Sign of the Times, or SOTT.net, that you guys work with. And why don't you give us a quick rundown of how you select the kinds of topics that you put up at that website and that you write about in Dot Connector?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. This is Signs of the Times started as a personal protest of my own. I went with my husband to a mathematics conference in Cookeville, Tennessee, in early 2002, and I was just watching this rhetoric that was flying back and forth between George Bush and Saddam Hussein, and I was thinking to myself, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And I realized that one of the problems was that people forget from one day to the next what's happened. And that the only reason, and I could see right away the guy was a psychopath.
Which one? Bush.
Bush.
Yeah. Saddam may not have been exactly a saint either.
He wasn't. He was a characteropath, but Bush was, really whacked. And I could see that the real problem was that people forgot from one day to the next what had been in the news. Today, George Bush would say this. Tomorrow, the news would print that Saddam had said that. And then George Bush would say this, and then Saddam would say that. And I thought, this is crazy. So I started recording this on a website.
And that was your personal battle against the memory hole. And we're going to have about a couple of minutes of memory hole here as we go to commercials. But we will be back. I'm Kevin Barrett talking with Joe Quinn and Laura Knight-Jadczyk of the Dot Connector magazine and SOTT.net. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. This is Truth Jihad Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Barrett, talking this hour with Laura Knight Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. And just before we jump back into the conversation, let me just tell you that some incredible guests are coming up on this show. There's Sheikh Yusuf Estes, one of the biggest Muslim TV figures in the English-speaking world, coming up real soon. Also, Mark Perkins of Muslim Veterans for 9/11 Truth. Former Congressman Mark Siljander, who is blazing a path of reconciliation between Christians and Muslims. Mickey Huff of Project Censored. Todd Fletcher, David Ray Griffin's personal assistant. Richard Falk, the special human rights envoy for the United Nations. And many, many more. Oh, let's not forget Ken O'Keefe, the guy who disarmed the Israeli commandos on the Mavi Marmara. This is going to be a great October for Truth Jihad Radio, and we're starting out today right now with Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. So, Laura, you were saying that you started SOTT.net as a way of fighting back against the memory hole that was swallowing up evidence of Bush's psychopathy.
Yeah, it was not just collecting the articles, but it was also commenting on them. Because if Bush would say something today, I would insert a comment saying, well, wait a minute, he said this, 3 days ago, and here is a link to the item. And then I started also collecting them because I noticed things were beginning to disappear. The web was being scrubbed. So I began to archive the articles. So it was not only truthifying them and archiving them, it was basically collecting a picture of the energy dynamic that was happening on the globe, the global political situation, so that a person could scroll through the page and get a real idea of what was really going on. That was the main thing. I called it Signs of the Times because I was also collecting at the same time I was collecting global information, such as things about earthquakes, tornadoes, that sort of thing. Weather patterns and fireballs and meteorites, and also UFO sightings, because those are interesting social phenomena. So it's kind of a combination. And then we started adding health information because we started getting into the whole health issue because we realized that the part of the whole conspiracy, I hate to say that word, but, I am a conspiracy theorist. Because
a proud conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, because conspiracy is the only reality. So I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. But the conspiracy against human beings is to make them as unhealthy as possible, because if they're unhealthy, they cannot think, they cannot function, they can't resist, they can't be educated, they can't. I mean, if you're not healthy, and this is something Pavlov discovered, if there's a strong dog that doesn't want to break, he would take that dog and he would perform surgery on it or inject it with some kind of pathogen that would cause it to become ill, and then he could break that dog. And that's, he was talking about the four temperaments, and a very strong, very willful dog that could not be broken otherwise could be broken through its health. So this is one of the things that I noticed is that people are being broken through their health, through their diet, through being given drugs, fluoride in the water. Fluoride makes you stupid, mercury in their teeth, the whole nine yards. So we try to cover everything that's really important to people, from health to politics to global events, geology, things that happen in the atmosphere, science and technology. And we have a special category that we call, the axis of evil, which pretty much is about the people who are truly evil. If anybody is really evil and they're doing something, that's where we categorize them.
Well, that's a wonderful category, and it does fit in with the whole idea of ponerology and political psychopathy, and this idea that the psychopaths rise to the top. And so I guess you have to give them their just due by putting their faces up there.
Yeah, well, what I was doing, I didn't really realize that many people were reading it, but sometimes I would get so depressed I would go to bed for a day. And then I would start getting emails from people saying, "Are you sick? Are you sick? What's happened?" And then I realized that people were reading it, and then people started helping me and sending me stuff. And right about now, I think we have maybe 50 editors around the globe, who look for the articles that we put up on the site, and if necessary, they go in and truthify it. Sometimes we truthify it simply by changing the headline. if something is really so outrageous that anybody can see it, you don't need a comment. We just put, propaganda alert or psychopaths in action or, something like that, and then you can just read the article, which is straight from the mainstream news. This is what we're dealing with mainly, mainstream news. It's not a bunch of, kind of iffy, unsighted material. It's what comes from the mainstream.
Well, that's, of course, how so many people became alerted to the evidence against the official story of 9/11 was through all of the mainstream media reports that falsified it. And they collected those at the, I guess they changed their name now. I'm thinking of the, what's that website that archives all the mainstream stories on 9/11?
Oh, geez.
Cooperative Research?
Cooperative Research, yeah. They changed their name now to, what's it called? Maybe somebody will put that up on my Facebook page for me. But in any case, you're right. The mainstream media reports these things once and often spins them. And so if you can just grab that and archive it and maybe truthify it and point to its importance.
And then they scrub it.
There you go. Before they scrub it, right?
The amazing thing was what was being scrubbed, and paying attention to what they scrub is a very important way to learn what it is they're thinking or not thinking about, and what they're trying to hide.
Well, can you give us a couple of examples of things that they've scrubbed?
Well, there was a whole lot of information around 9/11 that was on the web, and there were articles about the Wellstone crash that disappeared, and there were articles, numbers of articles about things that happened around the time of Bush's election that disappeared. One of the most interesting things that, I do genealogy as a hobby, and a whole lot of genealogical information relating to the Bush family disappeared from the web. I mean, just gone Saruni.
That's odd. Well, now, what are they hiding in the Bush family's genealogy, do you think?
Well, that's kind of funny because, one of our readers had a little booklet that dated back to the Revolutionary War, or it was put out about the Revolutionary War, I think in World War I, and it mentioned a George Bush who was a Jewish captain or major in the Revolutionary Army. And, it was just so bizarre because he sent me a photocopy of it, and I published it. Somebody else snagged it and wrote a, kind of a twisted article about it. But I thought this was really weird because, you can only go back so far, and then all of the lines just disappear. It's gone from the web. Gone.
How strange. The Bush family as crypto Jews?
It's a real good possibility.
Very strange. But, I've heard all sorts of interesting and sometimes bizarre speculation about the Bush family, and quite a bit of it turned out to be true. Russ Baker's recent book, Family of Secrets, confirms, using the best tradition of hard-hitting journalism, that a whole lot of the stories that we've heard about the Bush family, including their participation in the JFK assassination and Bush Sr.'s rigging of Watergate to take down Nixon, turned out to be true. So who knows?
Well, you gotta look at it this way. When you're dealing with psychopathy, you're dealing with individuals that consider normal human beings as being another species, and even if they, will do unto each other before they do unto do unto them, they still, when it comes to dealing with the average person, they will group together and they will breed together and they will marry, intermarry. I mean, look at Chelsea Clinton. Geez, they clawed their way up into the ranks, and now they're breeding into it. So,
oh boy. So Laura, that leads me to a question about ponerology and this theory about psychopaths rising to the top of the power hierarchy. I think it's a really important idea, one of the most important ideas out there. In fact, I'm hoping to finish a book-length extension of my article, Twilight of the Psychopaths, about this very important idea that you've done so much to publicize. But here's the question. Most of the existing work on psychopathy looks at the losers, right, the ones who ended up in jail. Mm-hmm. And some of these experts tell us that, these psychopaths really can't accomplish very much because they have no attention span, they can't work with other people, therefore they're never really going to go anywhere except prison. But do you think there's a real major difference between those psychopaths, the ones who mainly get studied, the ones in captivity, versus those at the top of the power hierarchy like the Bush family?
I think there's a big difference, and the main difference is the ones that get studied are failures. Hervey Koehli had a particular population that he was able to study. It was a hospital population, a private hospital, and most of the ones that he studied were, put into the hospital by their families. They weren't necessarily raving criminals. They were just ne'er-do-wells, And Robert Hare had a criminal population to study, and both of them, they understood that there were psychopaths that they weren't able to study. At one point they did a kind of a survey to find, psychopaths that were subcriminal, and, it's like a self-report, asking these questions. Well, a psychopath is going to answer a questionnaire. I mean, they're not stupid. They're going to answer it so that it sounds like that there's really no psychopaths in the normal population. I mean, that's not true then, because there are other ways to discover them, and there are studies that have shown that up to 25% of the individuals in any university psychology course system, have the qualities of the psychopath.
Wow.
So probably the best way to study the non-criminal psychopath is the way Hare and Babiak did, snakes in suits, by talking to the people around them, the people who worked with them, their bosses, their, people who worked under them, and also Anna Salter, who wrote a book about predators, pedophiles, rapists, and so forth, and then Martha Stout, her sociopath next door. I don't like the fact that she, copped out and used the word sociopath because, come on, let's have a single word here and know what we're talking about, because when psychologists talk about this topic to one another, they use the word psychopath because they understand what they're talking about. They don't quibble around with antisocial personality disorder, sociopath, etc. They call it a psychopath.
Well,
but
it's
anyhow,
the same thing. It's just the lens you're looking through. If you're looking at this behavior, purely behavior, it's sociopath. If you're looking at the person as a person, it's a psychopath, right?
Well, a psychopath is more than behavior. A psychopath is an internal landscape because the behavior can be completely hidden. And actually the main thing that describes it is Koehli's term, mask of sanity. I mean, they're completely masked. They appear to be so sane, so normal, so healthy, so wholesome, so without stresses, without neuroses, without anxieties. They're like the ultimate normal person. And then Robert Hare described what was behind that mask, which is without conscience. And then, of course, Hare and Babiak, with their title of their book, was Snakes in Suits. So you've got a snake in a suit who is without conscience, the suit, of course, is the mask of sanity. It's really fascinating. I've had an opportunity to study several of them up close, the successful kind, and it's just really fascinating.
Well, I agree. But the thing is, like in Koehli's book, which is the original one, The Mask of Sanity, that really opened up the field, the people that he studied, even though they wore those masks, you can't imagine most of those people ever really succeeding very well or setting up an elite bloodline that was going to rule the world. These people are really major league losers who just sabotage themselves and do outrageous things that bring them down. And so there must be something different about these people with elite bloodlines.
Koehli also wrote about people that he knew in the community that he knew were psychopaths but were successful and did not end up, in his office. He wrote about the psychopath as physician, the psychopath as psychologist. He wrote about some successful ones in there, but he wasn't able to get, to put together quite the in-depth study that he was able to put for his other subjects because they were not his patients. They were not, he was only able to know by the grapevine, know by, what family members had told him, to know by their actions, different things like that they clearly were psychopathic.
Right,
I think maybe an important point to consider is that psychopaths aren't a segment of the normal population, like the bad end of the normal human population, but they're more likely to be a subspecies.
A separate taxon.
Yeah, so that there's a full range of psychopaths, or there's the same full range of psychopaths as there is in the normal human community, from the in terms of intellect or ability, etc.
And aspirations, you know. Yeah. It's quite a sampling from what we've seen.
Right. And another question then would be, to what extent are psychopaths people who is this population completely cut off and identifiable as a separate group? And to what extent are they just calling psychopaths people who score at a certain level on this test, and then somebody who scores just below that level may be normal, but they may not be somebody that you would want to trust your life with?
Yeah, well, the problem is between, traits, because you can say that a person could be really violently criminal and not be a psychopath. They're somebody who, was born normal, who was very damaged, very abused, and had a lot of problems, and maybe even some kind of chemical imbalances in their brain, but they're not a psychopath. And on the other hand, you can have the most normal, and there have been so many examples in coming out of the news in the past several years that we've been paying attention to. For example, a judge down in Australia who was considered to be a philanthropist and who initiated actions, to protect women and children from abuse and so forth. And it turns out that, all the things that he was agitating or activisting against were the things that he was doing. Things for priests, for example, for crying all night.
Right.
You go around and you wear this, this cassock and your dog collar, and then you're diddling little boys in the back room.
Yeah, there seems to be a tendency for some of them to move right into those roles that should be the protector roles, and it turns out to be the fox guarding the hen house. Hey, we do have a caller. It's Kathy calling in from California. Welcome, Kathy. How are you?
Fine. How are you, Kevin, today?
All right.
Agree with she's saying about how news or items get swept under the rug and websites disappear. I don't know if you're familiar, but in Waco, they had, that massacre, of course. The sheriff there said they lived there since 1959. There were peace-loving people, and he never had any problem from the Davidian group at all. They were not in a cult. They had their religion, and they kept to themselves. And then that article has disappeared, and now he is dead.
Well, I think that's the Waco incident is a classic example of one of these incidents where the authorities turn out to be psychopaths. If you watch that movie about Waco, Rules of Engagement, you see that the elite cops that they brought in to put down the Waco thing were complete psychopaths, and they just burned those people alive. Listen, we'll be back in a moment. I'm Kevin Barrett. I'm talking with Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. They've got a great new magazine out and a great website, SOTT.net. We'll talk some more about it.
If you want to...
Imagine that. This is Kevin Barrett. You're listening to Truth Jihad Radio. And I'm talking right now with Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. They have a new magazine out called The Dot Connector. It's a really nice-looking thing, and it's actually on real-life newsprint. Hard to find honest information on newsprint these days, so it's always good to see a new, high-quality, honest information magazine come out so we can set the record straight about our history, including incidents like the Waco incident that the caller brought up. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the movie Waco Rules of Engagement and the indications that these elite special forces people that they brought in to burn to death these people at Waco sure looked like psychopaths.
Yes, but I think there's a bigger issue here. And I think the issue is to change people's perception of the word cult and to make it seem to be completely unhealthy. I mean, it was not just Waco, but it was also Jonestown, the People's Temple, and then there was the what were those crazy people over in California, the 48 people or 38 people that the Hale-Bop people, Heaven's Gate,
right,
and then the Solar Temple, is to change people's perception, because then they can, it's just like changing the perception of the word conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy theorist, when you get accused of that, you feel your heart rate increase because you know what other people think about that word. And the same thing with cult, because it's like, you get accused of that, and we have been accused of that because we have certain ideas, and we are a group, and we adhere to those ideas, and we follow certain principles about news reporting, and I mean, the very fact that we talk about psychopathy the way we do gets us accused of being a cult.
Well, count me as a member of your cult, Laura.
Well, yeah, but this is what it was all about. It was to make people think that if you're a cult, you're really, really dangerous. And, I mean, they pushed that so hard. And those poor people, I mean, they really did nothing wrong. Nothing wrong, period. End of story. And but they, in the minds of the majority of the people, and here's the problem. We've got alternative news, we've got alternative radio, we've got, alternative this and that and the other thing. But still, the majority of the people are not tuned into that. They're still watching Fox, they're still watching CNN, they're still, reading the New York Times or their local daily newspaper. All of those things are controlled by a media conglomerate. They're listening to Clearstream radio channels, and it's all controlled by a media conglomerate that spins everything in a particular way. And this is something that, I keep telling people, if you want to effect a change, you have to take back the media. It's not enough to just have alternative media. At some point and some day, at some time, they're going to have to take back the media. Just like V did in V for Vendetta. He goes into the studio and he plugs in his CD and broadcasts all over the world or all over the country on the mainstream media. And this is what, ultimately is going to have to happen one of these days.
Well, I've tried to do that. I've done all sorts of provocation that has gotten me a bit of face time on the mainstream media as they try to demonize me. But, of course, they're going to always try to paint us as crazy cultists.
Exactly. They've got this word, and they created that in advance just so they would have, psychopaths are not stupid in a certain way. I mean, they're extremely cunning.
Well, they have to spend their whole lives studying how normal people react emotionally to things and what makes normal people tick in order just to get by. And I think some of them put that kind of knowledge that they accumulate over a whole lifetime of studying normal people to use in manipulating normal people.
Sure, they have motivation masters who sit up at night, to figure out how to to convince people to do this, do that, do the other thing, spin words, how to control words. I mean, it's 1984. I mean, geez.
Right. Well, so hey, Joe, you haven't said a whole lot. Why don't you come on and tell us how did you get involved in the dot connector, and what have you been doing before that?
Well, I've been working with Laura and others on Signs of the Times for about 7 years for now. So I've been editing articles and writing articles for the website, and just recently, as you know, we decided that we wanted to publish a magazine. I mean, the reasons for that are we wanted to diversify a little bit, but we also realized that, as you just said, there really aren't any quality magazines that have a high level of truth within them. And we wanted to fill that gap, and we think we're doing a pretty good job.
Well, the magazine looks really good. And have you managed to get any kind of mainstream distribution yet?
We're working on it right now. So kind of watch this space, I suppose. But,
okay, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the dot connector over at Borders and Barnes and Noble and places like that.
Yeah, we're working on it.
If they could put Paranoia magazine there, I would think they could get you guys in there easily.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the focus of the magazine is it covers quite a lot of topics, but one of the main topics is health, and Laura mentioned a little bit about that at the beginning about the need for healthy bodies, in order to have a healthy mind and be able to understand our reality and see lies from truth. Because if you're sick, you can't do any of that stuff, and that's part of the control system right now is to keep people sick. But another major aspect that we focus on is history, and the hidden history of the last maybe couple of 100 years, and going back a lot further sometimes, because history, understanding the truth about history is crucial to understanding what's happening in the world today. If people don't know what really happened in history, then they've no way to interpret what's going on now. For example, people right now, I would say most people in the US and in Western Europe, at least, have no idea that America, for example, is simply a reincarnation of the British Empire, for example. That America, the American elite, the psychopaths in power, are bent on world domination. If people understood that and understood that that has been the way things have played out in history over the past 300-400 years, with the British Empire up until the beginning of the 20th century, and then with the American government and creating an empire and expanding around the world. If people understood that, they would understand a lot more easily what is going on in the world today. They wouldn't be so confused about with ideas that America is a benevolent power trying to spread freedom and democracy. If they understood that it was about empire, about controlling the world, then things would become very clear, as would 9/11, for example.
Well, that raises the issue of which alternative information issues are the ones that we should be promoting the most and devoting the most attention to. I've personally been working probably the most on the 9/11 truth issue, although I'm also very interested in ponerology, political psychopathy. The reason I look at 9/11 is because, I've been trained in academia where we're supposedly taught critical thinking and how to sift through evidence using reason. And with 9/11, it's just so clear. When you sit down and take an honest look at the evidence, it becomes overwhelmingly obvious to any fair-minded person that there's just a massive problem with the official story and everything's pointing towards a false flag operation. There are very few other issues that are that clear. And, some of these other issues may be extremely important at some level. For instance, the UFO issue. Clearly, if these UFO sightings down through the years are what they appear to have been, then there's something really interesting going on in the world that we don't really know about. But again, the evidence is so mixed, and you have to sift through so much evidence to try to figure out what's going on with UFOs. It's true with many other issues, whereas with 9/11, it's just a no-brainer. And therefore, I figure that, I can get more people to wake up by talking about 9/11. Did you guys follow a similar path of reasoning in picking your issues?
Well, we thought about it. We thought that was a good way to approach it. 9/11, it was so obvious. And then we began to realize that there was this vast majority of people that just simply couldn't go there. And there are, there are brain chemistry reasons for that. It has to do with reward systems in the brain and how you're brought up. If you're brought up in a certain milieu and people think and believe a certain way, to step out of that belief system or out of that milieu actually causes pain in the brain. You get brain chemicals that get secreted in your brain and neurotransmitters that actually cause you to feel very, very bad. And then if you find a way to correct that, to rationalize away the facts that you're having to look at and say, oh, well, it's okay because here's another explanation for it. In other words, substitution and selection of the premises. Then you feel okay again. So, studying and understanding brain chemistry, and this was written in Barbara Oakley's book, something about evil genes, why Hitler rose, Enron fell, and, my sister stole my mother's boyfriend. That was the title of the book.
Oh, okay.
But it's a great book. And she has, some of the latest neurological, cognitive science research in there. So people, they actually have a reason why they can't go there. And they can't believe, because we're brought up to believe that our leaders have our best interests at heart. And, like our church and our presidents and our congressmen. And that's, you stand up from the time you're a little kid in the U.S. and you say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and and the president, comes on the air and, they play Hail to the Chief, and you go to a parade and the Stars and Stripes come by and everybody stands up, and crosses their heart, and blah, blah, blah. So you're conditioned this way so that when somebody comes along and says to you, your leaders have done this to you. They cannot go there because it hurts their brain.
That explains a lot about why sometimes when I tell people that 9/11 was an inside job, suddenly the person, looks like that Edvard Munch painting, The Scream.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going on. And this is something that, and say, 60, 70%, maybe 80% of the population is this way. They are so programmed, Pavlovian programming, that probably the best way to approach the topic is to have them understand psychopathy first. Because then if they really start to understand that, psychopaths rise to the top. Psychopaths rise to the top. Congressmen, presidents, doctors, lawyers, judges, policemen, blah, blah, blah. They're all likely to be psychopaths. And if you can get that over and over and over again and really get that into their heads, then they can grok 9/11.
But Laura, that's even a scarier idea than 9/11 being an inside job, isn't it?
Well, I don't. Is it a scarier?
It terrifies me.
It's scary. It scares the hell out of me.
Boy.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I haven't talked about this much on the radio, if at all, but last year, was it, or a year and a half ago, John Ronson, the author of The Men Who Stare at Goats and some other quite amusing books, approached me, actually found me on Skype and called me up and invited me to come along with him on his project, which was going to be about this idea that psychopaths rise to the top. He'd read Twilight of the Psychopaths, my essay, and he suggested that he and I go around the world interviewing billionaires and royal family members and so on, and we approach these people and say, hi, we're looking for that, secret something behind your success. We're doing these little psychological tests. Would you do a test with us? And, of course, it would be a psychopathy test. And so we would be looking for empirical evidence that the top people in the world are psychopaths. Now, I think he was doing this as a sort of a joke. Yeah. Yeah. But in any case, it's never got off the ground. It hasn't been done. But, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
No, if you could pull it off, but, there are people like Sandra Brown. She's trying to work with women, trying to get, women to wake up just on the personal level. And, we've got a little discussion group with several other people who are working with women who've been victimized by psychopaths. And, maybe if some of these women wake up to, what's really going on in their own lives, and then they can look at it and extrapolate it out to, the rest of the world, they might be able to begin to see and then, teach their children. But we're talking about, we don't have that kind of time. That's the bad thing. We don't have that kind of time to deal with things. People have got to wake up fast or they're toast.
Absolutely. With the communications media that we have available now and, the knowledge that's been generated, theoretically, it should be possible to get out there and create a kind of a new culture that would prevent psychopaths from rising to the top. That's the good side, the upside of my essay, Twilight of the Psychopaths. And we'll be back in a moment. Kevin Barrett with Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. Welcome back. This is Truth Jihad Radio, moving into the final segment of tonight's show. Quick message from our sponsors. Please get a copy of David Ray Griffin's brilliant and fairly short and readable, funny, beautifully written new book, Cognitive Infiltration. And write an Amazon review. David is out of the hospital and feeling a bit better, but not in a position to write any more books for a while, he says, and he needs people to push this one. So please go to Amazon, get a hold of a copy of Cognitive Infiltration, and write an Amazon.com review. David said he'd love to see 100-plus reviews up there. I've already done mine. Critically important new book. All right, back to tonight's show. I'm talking with Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. They've got a fascinating-looking new magazine out today, or not today, just quite recently, called Dot Connector, which includes information on a whole range of alternative info topics. And we're talking about the most important ones, the issue of political psychopathy, or ponerology, 9/11, and related issues. We only have a couple of minutes left. What should my listeners know about what we can do to try to change this sad situation we're in with psychopaths in power pulling off things like the 9/11 inside job?
Well, I think the first thing that I would like to suggest to everybody, we've created a program that utilizes stress reduction techniques, breathing techniques, and it also includes a guided meditation that helps you, it provides affirmations that help you to overcome some of these programming signals that are in your brain that open you up to seeing the truth, hearing the truth, understanding the truth, and also gives you some peace and equanimity in terms of dealing with the daily reality. And we need people who are able to be peaceful, who are able to be open, and who are able to deal with the world, in a reasonable way, and to share this program with their loved ones, because everybody needs, a technique that will help them, instantly reduce their stress. And it's, a vagal nerve stimulation program. So, we'd like to get everybody doing this and sharing it with all their friends and neighbors and loved ones, because, it's one way to get in the back door, open things up, open people's minds.
And tell me a little bit more about how this program works. Is it a relaxation meditation, guided meditation technique?
Well, there is a guided meditation at the end of it. It's more like a kind of a prayer. We call it a prayer, but it's really a series of affirmations about, being able to see and hear and understand what's really going on in the real world. But mainly, it involves some semi-yogic techniques, but we think they're a lot more ancient than yoga, and they've been cast in a more Western terminology. But the main part of the program is a system of vagal nerve stimulation, because if your vagus nerve gets stimulated, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which counters stress. And this is something, if David Ray Griffin's been in the hospital and been sick, this is something that he could definitely use and get some almost instantaneous results. We've got thousands of people already doing the program, and they are having remarkable results, and they're sharing it with their, family members, their friends, their loved ones. We've got people with chronic illnesses using it. We've got, all kinds of people just, trying this program, and it's really making a huge difference, and in the way they think even, because it's clearing their brains, and this is so important. You have to have your brain clear to be able to understand what's going on. And if you've got the copy of the recent issue of Dot Connector, you'll see an ad in there for it. It's the Aeroolus stress reduction, healing, and rejuvenation program.
Just to clarify that, it's a breathing program, as opposed to, there's no postures, there's no yogic postures or anything difficult like that. It's based mainly on breathing, so it's something that anybody can do, no matter.
You can do it laying in your bed. If you're old and decrepit, if you're 95 years old and in a wheelchair, if you're, paraplegic, you can do it. Anybody can do it. It just has to do with, 3 breathing techniques, and they are so simple. Once you get the hang of it, anybody can do it, and it's miraculous.
We'll send you a copy, Kevin, and you can
try it out.
Sounds good. I'd love to. I do believe in the importance of relaxation and meditation. I used to practice Zen meditation, then came to Islam and started doing Islamic meditation, not just the 5 times daily prayer, which is a form of sort of yogic meditation with postures, but also sort of chanting and breathing meditation that I learned in Morocco from the Sufis. And then more recently, I've been juicing that up with this binaural beat meditation, which guides your brainwaves into a very deep meditative state by putting different tones in each ear. And
I've done that years ago.
Right. All of these things, I think, are pretty important, because I know that if I'm doing that, my ability to cope with stress is much, much higher than if I'm not. So I think, you're absolutely right about what you're saying. And
well, this one is going to knock your socks off, because there's a technique you can do when you're driving your car. If you have just had a road rage incident, you can employ this technique right there, right then, and deal with it.
Wow.
It's amazing.
That's really interesting, because the kinds of meditation I've done you wouldn't really want to do while you were driving.
No, this has a technique you can use. You can use sitting at your desk, driving your car. You can use it, at a football game or flying on an airplane. We're working on a situation where we're going to try to get it into Airbus so that the Airbus employees can actually teach it to passengers to control their stress while they're on airplanes. Because it's a really simple technique. You can do like 20 breaths in this very specific way and instantly knock out your stress.
Wow. Well, so, if people had all known how to do this on 9/11, instead of sitting there staring at the television, freaking out, having their heart rates racing to infinity, being brainwashed, they all could have instead just turned off the TV, turned away, sat down, done some meditation, gotten into a clear state of mind, and we wouldn't be living in this fascist nightmare that has come over us. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. It's been wonderful. I appreciate your great work. Send us one more time to your website.
SOTNet.
SOT.net. SOTT.net.
And Aeroolus Healing, Rejuvenation, and Stress Reduction Program.
Okay, I'll check it out. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, bye-bye. All right, this is Truth Jihad Radio, back with more great guests coming up this month, as I already mentioned. Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. And just before we jump back into the conversation, let me just tell you that some incredible guests are coming up on this show. There's Sheikh Yusuf Estes, one of the biggest Muslim TV figures in the English-speaking world, coming up real soon. Also, Mark Perkins of Muslim Veterans for 9/11 Truth. Former Congressman Mark Siljander, who is blazing a path of reconciliation between Christians and Muslims. Mickey Huff of Project Censored. Todd Fletcher, David Ray Griffin's personal assistant. Richard Falk, the special human rights envoy for the United Nations. And many, many more. Oh, let's not forget Ken O'Keefe, the guy who disarmed the Israeli commandos on the Mavi Marmara. This is going to be a great October for Truth Jihad Radio, and we're started out today right now with Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn. So, Laura, you were saying that you started SOTT.net as a way of fighting back against the memory hole that was swallowing up evidence of Bush's psychopathy.
Yeah, it was not just collecting the articles, but it was also commenting on them, and that the only reason, and I could see right away the guy was a psychopath.
Which one? Bush.
Bush.
Yeah. Saddam may not have been exactly a saint either.
He wasn't he was a characteropath, but Bush was, really whacked. And I could see that the real problem was that people forgot from one day to the next what had been in the news. Today, George Bush would say this. Tomorrow, the news would print that Saddam had said that. And then George Bush would say this, and then Saddam would say that. And I thought, this is crazy. So I started recording this on a website.
And that was your personal battle against the memory hole. And we're going to have about a couple of minutes of memory hole here as we go to commercials, but we will be back. I'm Kevin Barrett talking with Joe Quinn and Laura Knight-Jadczyk of the Dot Connector magazine and SOTT.net. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. This is Truth Jihad Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Barrett, talking this hour with Laura Knight, butchering that name. And this is really the seminal book on political psychopathy. The fact that something 2 to 4, 5% of males in the USA, different percentages in different countries, are basically born without any conscience whatsoever. These people have a tendency to rise to the top of power hierarchies with horrific results, and sometimes it turns into an epidemic, gets completely out of control, and we may be living through one of those times. They've done great work on other issues as well. The Dot Connector magazine, just Google it up, is, I think, one of the most interesting things on newsprint these days. So, hey, without further ado, let's welcome Joe Quinn and Laura Knight-Jadczyk. Welcome, Joe and Laura.
Hi, Kevin. It's good to be here.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, great to hear you guys. So, boy, it's Laura. I think you were on the show about 2 years ago, as I recall, and we mainly discussed.
I have a vague memory of it. I've done a number of shows, and I forget.
I'm sure you have. You were really, really good though on that particular show. It was one of the most popular episodes.
We talked about ponerology, didn't we?
We sure did.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the book that inspired my essay, Twilight of the Psychopaths, which went viral, helped popularize it. Yeah. Yeah, so, your magazine, Dot Connector, takes on all kinds of alternative information topics, as does the website Sign of the Times, or SOTT.net, that you guys work with. Why don't you give us a quick rundown of how you select the kinds of topics that you put up at that website and that you write about in Dot Connector?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. This is Signs of the Times started as a personal protest of my own. I went with my husband to a mathematics conference in Cookeville, Tennessee, in early 2002, and I was just watching this rhetoric that was flying back and forth between George Bush and Saddam Hussein, and I was thinking to myself, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And I realized that one of the problems was that people forget from one day to the next what's happened.
Okay, welcome back. This is the second hour of Truth Jihad Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Barrett. I'm on every week, same time, same channel, here on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. For information about my radio shows and many other things, just visit the website, truthjihad.com. From there, you can click on the radio show link and find your way to information about today's show and other shows. All right, well, this hour, I'm going to be speaking with a couple of great guests, including one who's been on before, but it's been a while. It's Laura Knight-Jadczyk and Joe Quinn, who are working together right now with a wonderful new magazine called the Dot Connector magazine. Laura Knight-Jadczyk is well known in the alternative information world. Personally, I think maybe her greatest accomplishment that I know about, at least, is helping bring to the world this incredible book, Political Ponerology, written by a fellow named Loba Chusky, probably